Digital transformations are set to reach $3.4 trillion by 2026, according to IDC and research by McKinsey, amongst others, stating that roughly 70% of these fail to deliver successful outcomes. So if 70% of digital transformations fail, the question has to be asked, why do we keep continuing this recurring cycle? We can't possibly expect a different outcome, can we? This wheel of chaos always starts with knowing a change is needed, and it's usually the IT teams in the line of fire. So the leadership team brings in consultants to advise, a digital transformation is recommended, and then the consultants are engaged to implement, but there is little or no follow-through. Then, when IT teams revert back to their old ways of working, the change fails. The business leadership becomes disgruntled and the executive who owned the change moves on, and a new executive is hired, who then recognises that a change is needed and the wheel of chaos begins again. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could stop this cycle and redesign your organisation's structure to provide true visibility, shared vision, and a clear understanding of how everyone's contributions support the organisation's strategic goals? My name is Mary-Beth Hosking. I'm the author of Not Another Digital Transformation, the 10X Generation, and I'm going to show you that there is another way. So, how many times have you been through a digital transformation? Give it some thought, because sometimes they're stuck in the middle of other things. I know that in my world, I've been through at least 8 digital transformations. Now, these were not technology uplifts. So what they really were, for all intents and purposes, was a rethink of how the technology department needed to function, a rejig of the ways of working, as it were. The organisations that I've worked in believed that all of the problems they were experiencing stemmed from the technology department, that the tech department didn't work well or didn't play well with others. And what we'd find is that there'd be so little advocacy between the tech department and all of the other departments within an organisation. Tech just wanted to do a good job, wanted to understand what it was that the business wanted to be delivered, but just kept missing the mark. And in missing the mark, it impacted things like market share and profitability, and therefore all the woes of the organisation seemed to be forced back on to the tech department. So my big question for everybody watching this video is, if you've been through a digital transformation, how successful was it? How were the successes measured? What was it that worked? What didn't work? Was it truly a technology uplift? Or really was the tech department targeted and the ways of working re-envisioned, reimagined, and then were they implemented? I'm really curious about that. For me, it was really a case of just targeting the tech department. And so therefore, that really was unsuccessful, because when you don't work through proper transformation with teams, individuals, and take that journey across an organisation, you're left with a failed digital transformation yet again. When Adi Kalra and I started writing Not Another Digital Transformation, we asked this question of a number of IT professionals that we worked with. How successful was the digital transformations you'd been through? And for the most part, many individuals said they were not successful. They were all failures. They failed in different ways. So the big question for us was why? And what it really pointed to was that the organisational alignment was missing. And it kept coming back to that for us, because the problem that the business was experiencing was not driven by the technology department at all. The problems that the business were experiencing were unrelated. Therefore, when the organisation decided to go through yet another digital transformation, and that was not what was needed. What was needed was that organisational alignment. When those two came at cross purposes, the transformation would fail. The tech department and all of the individuals that worked within it would once again feel like failures. And yet it was not of their doing. It was because there was no clear understanding of what the real problem was. What was the problem that they were trying to solve? This alignment piece got Addie and I thinking, how amazing would it be to work for an organisation where you had the same level of visibility as if you were taking a holiday? Let's think of it like this. We'll call it the plane analogy. Now, I'm assuming that every single person watching this video has taken a trip on a plane. If you haven't taken a trip on a plane like that, maybe a train or something, but let's just assume you've all bought a ticket, you're going on vacation with your families. When you take a plane trip, from that very first moment that you purchase your ticket to the point of which you land, everybody that interfaces with your journey knows exactly where you are going and when you need to be there. When you're going to arrive, they have visibility to all the other planes that are going to be taking off. They have visibility across all aspects of the airport functioning, etc., etc. So, think of this. You've purchased your ticket. You've now arrived at the airport. You've checked your baggage. You've got your boarding pass. You know exactly which gate you're going to be going to. You toddle off to the plane and you sit there waiting in the gate lounge for the plane to be, for the boarding to be announced. You have the same visibility as every single person sitting in that boarding lounge with you. How amazing would that be if this was your workplace? You all know where your ticket's taking you. Okay, so now you're boarding the plane. You get onto the plane. What's the first thing you do? Sit down. Yep, this is my seat. You've put my baggage up and you click your seatbelt, all in place. In fact, every single person on this flight have all clicked their seatbelts in place because you all know what's expected of you as soon as you sit down in the seat. Every person that's sitting with you knows exactly where you're headed. The flight crew know exactly where you're headed. The ground crew know exactly where you're headed. Down on the ground, the baggage handlers have your luggage. They look at that luggage tag and they know exactly where your luggage is meant to go to. So they put that on the right plane. The pilots know where you're going. They know how much fuel is necessary. They know all aspects of where you're all headed. And in the flight tower, they also know where you're going. So every single person from the point that you bought your ticket knows exactly where you're headed, and every single person on that flight knows exactly where you're headed. Imagine this were the operational layer of your organisation. This is the operational tier. Everybody knows exactly where you're headed on your flight. How amazing would it be to have that level of visibility? Everybody knows your destination. That is what we call the operational tier. And having that true visibility of where your plane is about to take you. Now we're all seated and we're ready to take off. This is where the tactical tier comes into play. And in the 10X generation, this is all of your departments. So when you're on the flight and you're about to take off, the flight crew will start to do specific activities, the same as what different departments do in your organisation. They will take you through the safety protocols as the plane is moving and getting ready to taxi. They'll take you through the demonstration so that we all know what safety measures need to take in place. Then we're ready for takeoff. Everyone's seated. The plane starts to move on the runway. Starts to pick up speed. Flaps go down, and then you're in the air. 10,000 feet. You'll hear that first ping. I don't know if you knew that that first ping meant that it's 10,000 feet, but it is. Then you'll keep going up further. Then you'll hit about 30,000 feet, and the second ping will go off. And this is where the pilots will now turn off the seatbelt signs. But we all know that we should keep our seatbelts fastened, right? But everybody on this flight all know exactly what needs to happen and what needs to take place. Flight attendants will start coming through the cabin and doing their drinks and meal service. But they all know that we're working towards getting us to our destination. Our pilots know. The destination knows that we're about to arrive and when we're arriving. Everything in the tactical space is moving towards the same direction. Now, if we think about this from an organisational perspective, every single department understands what the operational tier is doing and what it's doing to support the organisation to meet its strategic intent. Every single department understands exactly what its function is. Human resources or people in culture know exactly what they need to do to help the individuals within the organisation to meet the strategic intent. Finance knows what it needs. Marketing knows what it needs, and so on and so forth. Every single department, as on the plane, with the flight crew, with the flight attendants on the plane, with the pilots, all know what's necessary to get you to your destination. If we were in an organisation, that's what it would feel like. We all know what the strategic direction is, and we all know exactly what we need to do to get there. That is the true visibility in the 10X generation. Operations know everything that's necessary to meet the strategic direction. So does the tactical layer. You're now cruising at 30,000 feet, 500 miles per hour, as you're headed towards your destination. This cruising altitude is really the strategic layer. This is the time where everybody across the entire organisation has very clear view of where you're going, exactly when you're going to get there. The pilots will give you an update as you're landing, where that's going to be, even down to the point where the flight crew know which carousel your bags are going to be delivered to, what the weather is like at your destination. And when you land, all of this amazing visibility gets through to your entire organisation. How amazing would it be if you worked for an organisation where you had the same level of visibility as when you are on a flight? That is what we call the 10X generation state. But to go exponential, it's to take it that one step further. And this is where true organisational alignment to the 10X generation state comes in. So let me summarise the 10X generation concepts for you. Each tier, the operational, tactical and strategic, also has within it an operational, tactical and strategic layer with clearly defined objectives that help each tier support the overall strategic direction of the organisation. By understanding this concept, you create a level of advocacy across all tiers and departments. It is in this advocacy that we truly understand what the strategic intent is of each department that we interface with. And this gives us a level of visibility of what is important in each department, in each tier. We also understand how our work impacts others and how we can work harmoniously together. This, in essence, is what the 10X generation state is about. Once you have achieved true visibility across all tiers, this is when your organisation will achieve a state of cruising altitude. But is cruising altitude enough? Do we want to just cruise along in the same way for miles and miles? Or do we want to go exponential? Do we want to reach for the stars? The concept of going exponential is the backbone of the 10X generation state. It is true visibility, and this is achieved when you remove silos from your organisation. It is about advocacy, both horizontally and vertically, in your organisation. It is about understanding strategic intent across all tiers and removing current organisational design constraints and that bloated headcount, and keeping all employees at the centre of critical thinking and involving them in decision making. This is what the 10X generation does. It is a radical realignment of the way organisations are structured, and it can do all of that without the need of yet another digital transformation. So, do you know which stage you currently are at? Where is your organisation right now? We've gone through this whole plane analogy, so I want to revisit that just slightly so that you've got a little bit of an understanding. Are you at the boarding stage? So remember that this is the stage where you went in with your ticket and you were getting on the flight. Baggage handlers knew where luggage was going, etc., etc. If you are at the boarding stage, then what this means in your organisation is you are at the operational stage. And your operational state, or your IT department, should be a highly efficient function in your organisation. So really think about this. This means everyone in IT understands clearly what they are doing to support the organisation and each department within it. Every deliverable that IT brings to you links clearly back to the strategic direction. Now, this means that you're not asking the question, why is IT giving me this? I didn't ask for this. I don't understand what problem this is trying to solve. If you're asking yourself that question, or others in different departments are asking themselves at that stage of delivery, then it shows that your IT department is misaligned with what the organisation needs. If you are not at least at this stage, then I'm sorry to say it is likely that your organisation is not functioning optimally. Now, let's be honest, you already know the answer to this question. You know whether your boarding stage is optimal or not. You know that if your bag doesn't arrive at the other destination at the end point, you know that there's something wrong in the operational tier. So really, it is looking at this through a very critical lens that you need to. If you are not at boarding stage, if your IT department isn't delivering the value that you're expecting, then you know that there is misalignment of the strategic direction for each department and with IT. Now, if you sit back and say, yes, our IT department is functioning and we are getting the deliveries that we need from that department, then that is brilliant. So if you are at boarding stage, but now let's look at, are you at takeoff stage? Then this is really where your operational teams and all of your individual departments are working cohesively. Not some of them, but all of them. They're all aligned and knowing what is necessary for each department to meet its own strategy and how that strategy lines back with the organisational strategy. This is a really important differentiator to understand. Each department, as we said earlier in that tactical space, will have its own operational, tactical and strategic layers. It will have its own nuances within each department. Each of those need to align, and then they need to align with every other department within your organisation. So takeoff is not as simple as just taking off in the flight. It is making sure that each department has advocacy across it, as well as knowing what is important for each department in its own right, and then what it is across the whole. Now, if you are at cruising altitude, then all the stars have aligned for you, and you are all in your organisation working towards the same strategic intent. However, while it might feel comfortable or safe to sit at cruising altitude for a while, it should ultimately be the goal of your organisation to go exponential, to look at how everyone interfaces with everyone else, how each operational, tactical and strategic tier interfaces with each other, how everything that you do affects what another department does. In having this level of visibility of what everyone is doing, and then removing those silos and all of those points that I pointed out earlier, that is when you're going to go exponential. And that is where each organisation really, truly needs to strive. If you want to know more, please connect with us via LinkedIn or on our website. We would love to hear what you think about the 10X generation and not another digital transformation. And I'd love to know what you think of this video. On the next screen, you'll find our QR codes to easily link with us.